Welcome to Best Disc Golf Discs video guide series. In this episode, we'll be covering how to choose the best disc glide rating. Today we'll be covering what is glide, how glide affects disc flight, and when to choose high or low glide. So let's get started. According to Dave Dunapace, the inventor of the modern disc golf disc, glide describes the disc's ability to maintain loft during flight. He also describes glide as the amount of lift a disc has, usually compared to other discs in the same speed category. To explain the concept of lift, while a disc is in flight, the weight of the disc is of course pulling it down, and the opposing lift force is what's keeping it in flight. The concept of lift is what we'll be spending a lot of time on today, as the amount of lift generated by the disc is where it gets its glide rating. To understand how the glide rating fits into the big picture, we'll need to understand lift coefficient, expressed by this complicated formula that breaks down into lift is a function of the air density, the air speed, and this group of variables at the end that essentially combine to create our glide rating. Restated, the total lift of the disc is the air density times the air speed times the glide rating. So anytime one of these three factors in yellow is increased, you'll have more lift, and when one of these factors is decreased, you will have less lift. Lift is obviously an essential part of disc golf flight, and while it is critical to distance, too much lift can create a disc that sails high, slows too quickly, and changes its line unfavorably. So the question becomes, when should players use high glide? We found 4 situations. The first reason for using high glide is for extra distance. Because of the exponential relationship between velocity and lift, players who throw with low velocity will particularly need extra glide to give them more distance. This includes beginners, low-power players, or any player who is in trouble and can't get a full throw motion into their disc. While all players will benefit from good glide on their drives, high-power players do drive with moderately high discs, such as a Destroyer or a Wraith, and you would rarely see a professional using a maximum glide disc. This is because their extremely high release velocity combined with maximum glide would generate too much lift. The second time to choose high glide is with a tailwind. During our video guide on disc selection and wind conditions, we spent a significant amount of time talking about headwinds, tailwinds, ground speed, and airspeed, and we highly encourage that you watch that video to get more information on this concept. But anecdotally speaking, if you've ever thrown a styrofoam airplane that normally would fly like this, thrown into a headwind, that same styrofoam airplane will fly something like this, immediately surging up into the sky. This is because headwinds increase the amount of lift that objects generate, so you'll want to decrease the amount of glide you're using to compensate for that. Conversely, because tailwinds decrease the amount of lift something generates, you'll need to increase your glide to compensate. The third key scenario we found is when air density is low. With aerodynamics defined as the interaction between air molecules and solid bodies moving through them, and low-density air having relatively few molecules per a given unit of volume, low-density air produces a smaller aerodynamic effect. Thin air equals less lift. The 2 main scenarios in which you'll see thin air, the first is at high altitude, the second is when you're playing in high heat. High altitude and high heat both call for high glide. The fourth scenario for considering high glide is with heavy plastic. We'll use the end of a Tern as an example. It's often regarded as a very high glide disc. The Tern is available for between 130 and 175 grams. The way the disc manufacturers do this is with the density of the plastic. The size and shape of the disc do not change, and therefore the lift force does not change as the disc weight changes. However, as we've discussed before, lift and weight are opposing forces, so if lift remains constant but weight changes, the flight line will change as these two are thrown out of balance. Let's say you've chosen to play with a 150-gram Tern, and at 60 miles per hour it flies perfectly straight, meaning that the lift force and the weight are in equal balance. Now let's say that you choose a 130-gram disc. Because the lift force is the same, but the disc now has less weight pulling it down, the flight line will shift up as it generates more lift than the compensating weight. Conversely, if you were to go with a heavier 170-gram disc, now it's out of balance in favor of the weight, pulling the disc down. The key point to remember is that with any specific disc, using a lightweight version of the disc increases the glide effect, and using a heavy version decreases the glide effect. So in summary, you'll want to use high glide for extra distance, but high power players should use caution, with a tailwind, but never into a headwind, when the air is thin, typically at high altitude or with high heat, or based on the disc weight. Light discs have more glide impact than heavy discs. A third aerodynamic effect that we haven't discussed today is drag, which affects almost every area of flight, but that's another video. So we hope this helps. If you're not already a member of our website, we'd encourage you to subscribe to get access to free website member-only exclusive videos, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel where you'll get immediate notification of new videos here. Until then, thanks for listening and have a great round.